Dan Amira is the head writer for The Daily Show and just received an Emmy nomination for Best Writing for a Variety Series, which is the show's first writing nomination since Trevor Noah took over. Well, first off, congratulations for that. And what's it like to get that recognition, particularly for a year of so much upheaval, not just for the show, but for the industry as a whole due to the little pandemic?
Yeah, a little pandemic. I mean, it's great. It's great to get the recognition from the industry. I mean, people will pretend that they don't care about awards or doesn't mean anything. It does. It's nice to be recognized, especially since, you know, this is our first writing award or writing nomination under Trevor, and you know, we've been putting in the work. We've been working hard, and I think it's finally getting recognized by the industry. And it's been a tough year. We've really put in the extra effort this year to make basically a whole new show with a whole new systems in place, different content, different everything, different editing, graphics, the way we write it, the way we shoot it. I mean, we've had to adapt like all the other shows, but we've had to adapt to these really unprecedented circumstances. And I'm very, very proud of what we've been able to accomplish.
What's it, given how drastically the show has had to kind of regroup to put on a different kind of show, what is the creative process to comedy like? How is it different from a studio audience you're playing to an audience versus this intimate kind of Trevor at home alone and correspondence in their own homes and on webcams and doing bits in completely different ways?
I mean, it's so different. I mean, playing to an audience of a few hundred people, even the jokes you're writing are different jokes. You're writing for a big laugh, and when you're not getting that big laugh, you have to change how you write. So in a way, it's been good. We've been able to write different types of jokes, like some jokes that maybe are very cleverly worded or cutting or something like that, but you wouldn't get a big reaction out of an audience. But now it's well, we said it, we're cutting, and we're going to the next joke, and we don't need that big audience reaction to make that joke work anymore. So it's let us play with some types of jokes that we maybe wouldn't have tried with a big audience before. And the stuff with the correspondence, I'm amazed by, we're not just doing chats with correspondents over Zoom. We are doing entire sketches from the correspondent's house with just their phone and a producer talking them through it remotely, and it looks like a real sketch that was done with a crew or something. It's really incredible. But I obviously miss the audience. You miss that energy of having people there, and hopefully, someday soon we'll be able to get back to that, but who knows?
And working with a team of writers also, that must be quite different in terms of just the way the process of working is, from having a writer's room to doing all of that virtually as well. Does that make the process of writing take longer, or how does that complicate things?
I mean, it's definitely less fun. The writer's room at work is what you look forward to every day. You've more than a dozen funny people brainstorming, pitching jokes, building off each other's jokes, riffing with each other. It's you can't replicate that when you're not together. And especially, we even have a morning meeting, in the before times, we have a morning meeting to start the day off, where it's not just writers, it's studio, it's correspondence, it's Trevor, it's everybody who wants to be involved, the expansion team, the field team. We're all in a room together and sort of hashing out the day's stories, coming up with ideas for the show, and also just coming up with, thoughts and observations that make their way into the show. And it's really great, brainstorming session, free-for-all type of thing that you also can't do, because if you try to do that on Zoom, I'm sure anyone who's tried to do anything with 40 people on Zoom knows that it doesn't really go that well. So we've had to scrap that, but people still get their ideas out. We have pitch lists. We talk over Zoom when we can. We talk through our writing program, Scripto. We do FaceTimes. We try to replicate as much as we can.
And working with Trevor Noah, the fact that he's, not just doing the behind the desk stuff, but he's sort of doing these comedy bits on his own, with himself, sometimes alongside
Yeah.
himself. Like, what is the, how do you come up with, those bits, working with him to kind of figure out what works for him in this space, and what maybe doesn't work in that space for him?
I mean, that's another thing that this new format, it was forced upon us, but it is allowing us to play with different things. So we've been doing these sort of, you know, Family Guy style cutaways where he says, imagine if this happened, and then he just goes and he does it, acts out like a little sketch with himself and some props. We could do that in the studio, but it would be this whole thing. You have to set up the cameras and the crew and the lighting, and now it's just like Trevor goes over there, does it, comes back. It's great to play with the format a little bit. So, like I said, this is not what we planned, but the silver lining, or the glass half full version, is we've been able to play with different things like that we wouldn't be able to do in a regular studio setting.
And of course, the show is focuses on the news, and the news cycle just feels like it's getting faster and faster and faster. What's it like, as a writer, and having to kind of process all of this news 4 days a week, or now 5 days a week, or with the convention?
Yeah.
How do you process kind of the information coming in on a daily basis?
It's a balancing, because I mean, as anyone knows, if you want to, you can cover Trump all day, because he makes news every 5 seconds. But you want to give people a sense of what else is going on in the world. So what's the Trump that we really need, or that really has juice? And then what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement? What's going on with coronavirus? What's going on with, there's other stuff. There's the news doesn't stop around the world. So it is balancing. How do we give people an overview of everything that's going on, still having time for the most important things, which right now is Black Lives Matter movement, coronavirus, and the election, which are like the big stories, along with everything else. Honestly, like, I'm on Twitter, if you ask my wife, too much, but I'm on Twitter all the time, keeping track of what's going on, taking note of it, making sure we don't miss anything. And it's not just me, the whole show is glued to the news, and we sort of aggregate everything that we've seen and make sure that the best stuff gets in the show. But it is you can't take a break from it. Even when I go on vacation, I don't stop looking at the news, because I can't come back from work and be like, oh, what happened last week? You have to know. You can't leave and just not be aware of what's going on.
And there are weeks, like, every once in a while, the Daily Show will take a week off, and you'll find out that the World Extra exploded that week, and then you have to come back the week after. What is that like, to have kind of your brain always tuned into that, and even when maybe the show is not airing that week, is it feel like, oh, thank goodness we don't have to cover that right now, or, oh no, we have to cover that next week, or what kind of emotions do you go through?
It depends on the story. Sometimes you miss it and it's gone. It would be weird to come back a week later and say, hey, I know we missed a story, but something happened 8 days ago that we have some good jokes off of. Because for everyone else who's not on break, the world keeps going, and they've already read about it on Twitter and in the news, and maybe watched on other shows, and they don't want to hear 8-day-old jokes. So if the story's big enough, we'll cover it, and we'll find a way to cover it that isn't just a joke. Maybe we'll do a sketch or something that's a little bigger. It depends on the story. Sometimes we just miss it. But I'm usually not relieved to miss something. I'm usually upset that we didn't get the opportunity to do it on TV, because, oh man, I forget what it was. I think on one of our breaks, Trump, it was either the nuking hurricanes or the trying to buy Greenland, and we were like, had just started a break, and I was like, we're not gonna get to do this.
And just you mentioning that, it's just like the idea that is real life is just kind of just blows my mind for a second.
And you forget it too, because it was like 50 scandals ago. But yeah, he did want to nuke hurricanes at one point.
And how do you decompress from kind of the deluge of the news cycle, like, especially now during a pandemic, when it's harder to escape a lot of things in many different ways? What is your process of coming down from all that, if there is one?
It's hard, because some of this stuff you don't want to turn away from it. It's important. Not even if I wasn't working on a daily comedy variety show, you don't want to just tune this stuff off. It's important stuff. The election, Black Lives Matter, coronavirus, it's all stuff that affects our lives. So I don't necessarily want to tune it out, but I have gotten in the habit of just like, instead of watching anything serious on TV, anything that is like stressful, I'm just like going through Seinfeld again. I'm just rewatching Seinfeld on Hulu. I've seen them all 1,000 times. It's comfortable. It's like a blanket. It makes me forget for 25 minutes about everything going on.
And the show, was 30 minutes, and then it expanded to 45 minutes. Like, what was that like from a writing perspective? I know a lot of that is expanding the interviews and letting those breathe more.
Yeah.
But is there also like more material you're working through as a writer in each episode?
Yeah, I mean, it's been good from a writing perspective. There were times when 30 minutes was just too short, and we would end up cutting jokes after taping, not because they were bad, but because we didn't have enough time, and you have to cut something. So I think it's given us more room to sit in stories longer than we would have before, and that's been good from a writing perspective. You never want to cut a joke for time. That's brutal. It can happen. That's like such a waste of a good joke. Sometimes we can bring them back, but sometimes they're gone forever.
And the show is expanding ever further now for the conventions, the political conventions, doing 5 nights a week into Fridays now. How is that changing things, or has it changed things yet? Does it feel more kind of daunting, or like where are the feelings there?
We can add another day. It's not going to kill us. We'll handle it. I mean, we want to do the best we can to cover the conventions because, in normal times, we would be going there. We'd be going live from the site and doing stuff from the site much more than we can now. So, we just want to do what we can to cover everything as much as we can, like considering the circumstances. So, one other night in the week is not that big a deal.
And what's it like going into like now a virtual Emmys where it's you're going to like not going to be in a room with people, or at least not the room we're accustomed to. Like, what are your thoughts going into that?
It's too bad. I mean, I've been a few times, and it's always a fun time. I'm always still starstruck by people. I love just like walking by people and be like, it's the guy from Succession. He's right there. That's not going to be, I don't know exactly what they're planning for the like Zoom Emmys, but it's not going to be that. So it's disappointing, especially because, I really feel like we had a good year, especially in terms of Emmy nominations. We got 6 nominations, the most that the show's ever gotten, tied for the most. And so it really would have been a good thing for the staff to go there together, enjoy the ceremony, and have a good time as usual. But it is what it is. What are you going to do? It's coronavirus.
And when, whenever the show eventually gets back into the studio, like having adapted this new kind of show for the pandemic, do you imagine that you might bring a lot of this stuff back, or like in terms of like adapting some of this stuff that's really worked well into what you eventually go back to in the studio?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we haven't really talked about that, but I would imagine like some of the things that we've mentioned even in this conversation, the cutaways. I mean, we're doing a lot more with graphics than we used to. That's harder in a studio setting, but we have amazing people in our graphics department and in our crew, and I'm sure we could figure some of it out. I think it makes the show more dynamic and fun and lively, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if we took some of that back with us.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your Emmy nomination again, and the 6 Emmy nominations total for the show. And thank you so much for joining me, and best of luck in September.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And
Thanks
for the rest of the year, as you're covering more extensions and the campaign and the election.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.